My grandpa got into a fight at school, and I got called in. When I went to apologize, I was shocked to find out the other kid's guardian was my neighbor. You know, the 6 feet 2 inches guy with 8-pack abs, the totally aloof hottie. He just pulled out his phone and said, "Next time this happens, we can just handle it privately." But then the 2 old guys started fighting more and more. We started seeing each other all the time, but he was always cold and told me not to use it as an excuse to make a move on him. It was seriously discouraging. Until I overheard his grandpa complaining to someone. "That rascal grandson of mine keeps egging me on to spar with old Lucas. If we keep this up, I'm never going to graduate." After 3 long months of relentless effort, the aloof god next door finally fell for my floral shorts. That very night, he knocked on my door. He had just showered, his silk robe was loosely tied, and he wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, looking elegant and untouchable. And he was holding a small skillet. He spoke softly, "Ella, I'm here to cook for you." As he spoke, he took my hand and led me into my kitchen. I looked at the empty kitchen counters. "There's nothing here," I said, confused. "How are you going to cook?" He let out a soft chuckle. Then he grabbed me by the waist, and with a sudden lift, I was sitting on top of the counter. He started moving closer and closer. With a deft movement of his left hand, he turned on the faucet. What are you doing?" My voice trembled, not from fear, but from pure excitement. Drip, drip, the sound of water filled the silence. He looked down at the sound. "Silly Ella, don't you know?" He paused deliberately. Then, he slowly lowered the hand holding the skillet, resting it on the edge of the counter. He said, "To cook, you have to fill the pot with water first." Drip, drip, the sound was long and torturous. After what felt like an eternity, I finally couldn't take it anymore. I pressed my hands against his chest and said plaintively, "How much longer until the water is full?" I was getting a little impatient. He glanced down as if in thought, then looked back at me. "It's a bit slow. Let me help." His skin was so pale it made his lips look extra red. As he spoke, his Adam's apple bobbed, and it made me want to bite it. And of course, that's exactly what I did. But he was faster. He knelt down, getting closer to the faucet. And then, the stream of water grew stronger. The skillet began to make a TSK sound. The sound grew louder. And louder. I looked down at him, running my fingers through his hair, wanting him to take things a step further. Then the skillet exploded. And the explosion sounded just like a cell phone ringing. Wait, what the hell? A cell phone ringing? I shot up in bed, my eyes flying open. The curtains were drawn, leaving the room pitch black. But the screen of the phone on my pillow was glowing. So, everything that just happened was a dream? I was a little disappointed, but also a little thrilled. I just had to keep trying. One day, I would recreate that dream scene for scene. But since I have a habit of sleeping naked, I lifted the covers for a peek. Yup, time to change the sheets. I hate sleeping in a wet spot. The phone was still ringing. I picked it up and answered. A voice came from the other end. "Hello, is this Lucas Clark's guardian?" Lucas Clark. My grandpa. He's 68. And he's in school. The person on the phone sighed and continued, "Your grandpa, Lucas, got into a fight with another student at school today." I rushed over to the school without even having time to change the sheets. Ever since I brought my grandpa over from the countryside, he was always sighing and seemed incredibly lonely. He just didn't have anyone his own age to talk to. So my parents had an idea. They enrolled him in some classes at the local senior center. Maybe he could even find a little romance. Grandpa was excited about it, too. But that idea was shot down by the instructor right at orientation. She gently warned all the guardians. School policy states that students are not to engage in late-in-life romances, or we'll have to call you. Even though he couldn't date, Grandpa was still happy. After all, the senior center was full of people his age. They took classes together, caused trouble together, and ended up on the disciplinary notices together. That's right. My grandpa, Lucas Clark, was a model bad student. He was a real headache for the instructor. But getting into a fist fight and having his guardian called in? This was a first. That's why he didn't dare tell my parents. He was afraid he'd get an earful. So he gave them my number instead, asking me to pretend to be his guardian to save his old hide. I zipped over to the school on my scooter. Bursting into the office, I saw Lucas hiding in the corner, playing with his bird. Ahem, a literal, feathered bird. When he saw me, he turned his back, refusing to look at me. That was new. Usually, he wasn't afraid of anything. Grandpa, it's not good to hide after you've done something wrong. I crept closer, trying to get a better look. And I'm glad I did. When I saw him, I noticed a bruise forming near his left eye. I immediately spun around to face the instructor. Ma'am, my Lucas might be a handful, but at least he hasn't been caught dating. How could you let someone beat him up like this? The more I talked, the angrier I got. I rolled up my sleeves, ready to have a serious talk with the other student's guardian when they showed up. The instructor just gave me a weary smile. She pointed to another old man in the opposite corner, who was also playing with a bird. Why don't you take a look over there? I whipped my head around. The bird-playing old man heard us and turned to face me. Why did you hit my Lucas? The words died in my throat when I saw the two black eyes on his face. The old man blinked his big, innocent eyes. He just stared at me. Clearly, he was hurt a lot worse. Ahem, did my grandpa do this? I looked suspiciously at my grandpa, who was now tilting his head back with a "what are you gonna do about it" expression that made me want to punch him. The next moment, the office door was pushed open. My heart dropped. 10-1, this was the other old man's guardian. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to say. We'd have to smooth things over. But it was obvious the other guy was hurt more, so we were in the wrong. We were probably going to get yelled at. The door opened, and a figure walked toward me. Without thinking, I blurted out, "Hi, I'm Lucas Clark's guard." I stopped mid-sentence as I got a clear look at the person's face. He was wearing a simple white t-shirt. As he walked, the hem lifted slightly, revealing a lean torso. His shoulders were broad, and when he stood in front of me, he blocked most of my view. And that face. Pale skin, alluring eyes with a beauty mark right at the corner, and lips that, when pressed together, just screamed temptation. Like a purely physical reaction. Holy crap. Isn't this the aloof hottie who moved in across the hall from me a month ago? The very same guy from my wet dream this morning. My heart sank again. I was completely screwed. I hadn't even managed to land the hottie yet, and my grandpa had already given his grandpa two black eyes. How was I supposed to date him now? While I was having a mental breakdown, the instructor started explaining the reason for the fight. Before class today, Lucas was telling his classmates that his granddaughter was so beautiful and sweet that no man was worthy of her. George, who was sitting behind him, said he was full of it. He also claimed his own grandson was so handsome that no girl was worthy of him. Then, they started insulting each other's hypothetical grandchildren, insisting the other's grandkids must be ugly since they took after them. The argument got heated, and then they started fighting. The instructor sighed, probably because she found the reason for the fight utterly ridiculous. As for me, I was mortified. I mean, I don't think I'm ugly. But the guy standing in front of me was so devastatingly handsome you just wanted to jump him on sight. My grandpa couldn't help but chime in, "George, I told you my granddaughter is beautiful, I wasn't lying, MMPH." I clamped my hand over his mouth before he could finish. I have some pride, you know. Clearly, they were both at fault. I was about to say something reasonable. But before I could speak, the man in front of me pulled out his phone and held it out. "Next time something like this happens, we can handle it privately." The corner of his mouth twitched into a hint of a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He had this cool, refined air about him that just made you want to mess him up a little. He added, "Forgot to introduce myself. My name is Evan." Afterward, my grandpa, Lucas, strongly objected to me making nice with George's grandson. "Ella, he might be good looking, but he's George's grandson. We need to be careful." I gave him a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Don't worry, I've got my own game plan. I'm just pretending to make peace with him. Then I'll make him fall for me, willingly unbutton his shirt, let me have my way with him, and then I'll dump him hard. He'll be a sobbing, beautiful mess, hee hee hee." Lucas was speechless. In the mirror, the thirsty girl known as Ella Clark was giggling stupidly at her phone. The screen was still on her chat with Evan. "Ella, I will never approve of this union," Lucas declared with conviction. I snapped the compact mirror shut. I turned to my grandpa and continued my fake sweet smile. "Is that so?" He nodded. I smiled. "You know, I'm suddenly missing Mom and Dad." His eyes widened. Then he berated me, "Ella, you ungrateful child. You'd sell out your own grandpa for a man." But I ignored Lucas's dramatics. His voice was so full of energy that I wasn't worried about his health at all. After returning to my own small apartment, I stared at my phone. Evan's profile picture was a photo of himself. White shirt, gold-rimmed glasses. Staring right at the camera. He wasn't smiling, but it somehow made me want to scream more than if he were. I remembered the first time I saw Evan. It was over a month ago. He had just moved in and had a ton of stuff. It was a brutally hot day. As he carried his boxes from the mailroom up to his apartment, trip after trip, his white shirt was completely soaked. It was thin to begin with. Now his abs were faintly visible through the fabric. I was on my way home and happened to see him unbuttoning his shirt because of the heat. I was looking down, licking an ice cream bar. I wasn't paying attention and walked right into his chest. Damn, it was hard. As for the ice cream, it smeared all over his six-pack, melting into a milky white liquid that slowly dripped down. How should I describe it? The location was suggestive. And where it was dripping was even more so. A handsome face. Hard abs. And a spot that sparked the imagination. All of it. It made me fall for Evan at first sight. I secretly swore to myself that I would sleep with him. But the guy was just too aloof. For over a month, I couldn't find a single chance to talk to him, let alone do anything else. But this unexpected incident actually got me his number. The heavens must have seen my devotion. After a moment of reflection, I psyched myself up to send Evan the first message. "Hey. Can't be too eager, or I'll scare him off. I have to play it cool. Act like a demure, classy lady." After I hit send, the screen showed he was typing. A moment later. "Hey. Wow. We're so in sync. Even our first ever texts to each other are identical." This gave me a huge boost of courage. I sent a second message. "Evan, that's a really nice name. Strike while the iron is hot. Start with a compliment. He'll definitely feel a bit shy. That will bring us closer. Soon." He replied, "Thanks." 2 cold words. Not what I expected. But I've always believed that if you want to chase a hot guy, you can't have any shame. So I asked, "Why aren't you complimenting my name?" "Ella. It's a great name. It sounds perfect with Evan." This time, he replied quickly. I stared at the question mark on the screen, a little lost for words. Do handsome guys these days not know how to give a compliment? So rude. But I decided to be the bigger person and kept typing. "Our grandpas got a little banged up in their fight today. I was thinking of making some chicken soup this afternoon to bring to them at the center. But my pot is broken, so I was wondering if I could borrow your kitchen." As I typed that, I suddenly remembered my dream from this morning. Ahem. My hand slipped, and the message I wasn't even sure I should send went through. But this time, he didn't reply right away. A long time passed. So long that I thought he was going to refuse and tell me to go buy a new pot myself. Then my phone buzzed. Still just 2 short words, "You can." But it was enough to make me ecstatic. Just as I was about to head out the door, he sent another text. "I'm busy right now. You can come over in half an hour." That was fine. It gave me some time to prepare. I quickly grabbed my makeup bag, gave myself a no makeup look, and picked out a slinky red silk mini dress that showed off my figure. A spritz of perfume, and I was perfect. I finished all this with time to spare. Not wanting to be late for my first visit, I decided to leave a few minutes early. But as soon as I stepped out, the door across the hall opened. And not only that. There was a delivery guy at the door, holding a cardboard box. On the box was a picture of a giant skillet. Without a doubt. The delivery guy was dropping off a pot. But why? Confused, I looked up and met Evan's eyes. He was reaching for the box. The moment our eyes met, he froze too. After a pause, I carefully asked, "What, did your skillet break too?" "My pot has a mind of its own." Evan nodded gravely, then asked me, "What, is that not allowed?" I quickly shook my head. All I could do was marvel at how moody a handsome guy's skillet could be. Breaking just like that. Evan didn't seem to want to dwell on the issue. He stepped aside, letting me into his apartment. Given his aloof, godlike status, I expected his place to be decorated in a minimalist, sterile style. But I couldn't have been more wrong. It wasn't cold at all. On the contrary, the room was incredibly cozy. There was a vase of fresh, vibrant flowers on the table. The balcony was filled with over a dozen potted plants and flowers. "What, you like the flowers?" Evan had appeared behind me at some point, following my gaze to the tulips on the table. The yellow tulips were so cheerful. I nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, I love them. I really, really love them." According to the classic romance novel script, this is when Evan should say that since I like them, he'll give them to me. And sure enough, Evan reached out and gently touched a tulip petal. He began to speak slowly. "Since you like them so much, then, you can always buy a bouquet for yourself at the flower shop downstairs." "Oh, you don't have to. There's no need to give them to me, I'd be too embarrassed." I didn't even wait for him to finish before I started waving my hands in refusal. I wasn't really refusing. I was just trying to build up my shy girl persona. But before I could finish, I realized what Evan had actually said, and I froze mid-sentence. Ugh, so embarrassing. I didn't dare look at his face. I looked down and around, then bolted for the nearest door. "I'll just go start the soup in the kitchen." "That's not the kitchen." Evan's voice suddenly rose. But it was too late. I had already pushed the door open. It wasn't the kitchen, it was the bathroom. The first thing I saw was a pair of gray underwear. Probably just washed. They were hanging on a hook, still dripping water. I blinked, a little stunned. I never thought my first real interaction with my dream guy would involve seeing his gray underwear. Evan didn't look any better. He rushed in, snatched the underwear off the hook, and tossed it into a basin on the shower floor. He cleared his throat. "Nothing to see here." I knew he must be embarrassed. As his devoted admirer who dreamed of sleeping with him, I naturally had to protect his dignity in a moment like this. So, I laughed and said, "No worries, no worries. I totally didn't see the little piggies on them." That's right. My dream guy had little piggies on his black, gray underwear. Evan's face darkened for a second. Oh, looks like I took the wrong approach." I quickly tried to recover. The color. The color is nice, gray. Everyone online says gray makes it look bigger." I said those last few words with total conviction. And I couldn't help but let my mind wander. A guy this handsome, this aloof, I wonder if he's big. As I was thinking, my eyes naturally drifted downward. Ella Clark. The sound was practically squeezed through his teeth. Evan's chest was heaving, and his face was a little red. He was wearing white lounge shorts, looking very casual and at home. Seeing where my eyes were wandering, Evan instinctively closed his legs a little, looking at me like I was a total creep. "I'm just telling it like it is." I felt a little guilty, so my voice lacked confidence. Evan closed his eyes for a second. Then he strode over to me, grabbed me by the back of my neck, and dragged me into the kitchen. He pointed at the skillet on the counter. "Here, the pot's here. It's already been seasoned, you can use it directly." I nodded, reluctantly pulling my gaze away. But I wasn't discouraged. Sooner or later, I would get to touch that hot spot. I gave myself a mental pep talk. I started to prepare. Wait, what was I here to cook again? I stared at the skillet. I was drawing a blank. "Ella, don't tell me you forgot why you came here." It was like Evan was a mind reader. I stiffened my neck and said, "How could I forget? I was just thinking about a better soup recipe." Afraid he'd see through me, I reached for the skillet, planning to wash it first. You really can't multitask. The pot was heavy. Adding water made it even heavier. I rarely cook. I lack common sense. I strained, it was so heavy. I strained again, and my wrist twisted. The skillet tilted. The water inside sloshed out. Although I quickly regained control, some water still spilled. And just my luck, Evan was standing right next to me. The water from the skillet splashed all over him. To be precise, it splashed all over his white lounge shorts. You know what that means. Wet white fabric is basically see-through. And it tends to cling to the body. So, the soaked shorts clung tightly to him, making a certain area stand out. But it wasn't that obvious. How do I put this? I stared down at that spot and frowned. As a dedicated romance novel reader, I know the descriptions of the male lead's equipment are always epic. The female lead usually sees it and gasps, "It's so big." But, I tilted my head. I asked, completely bewildered, "Why does it look so small?" I'm ashamed to admit it. I've read a lot of novels. With very detailed descriptions. But that doesn't mean that I, a girl who's been single her whole life, knows anything about the actual size of that thing. After all, I've never seen a porn movie. It's not that I don't want to. Technically, I've seen the beginnings of a few. But the guys were so ugly they completely killed the mood. After skipping through a few more with the same result, I gave up. I stuck to my novels. So, I really had no idea what it was supposed to look like. It was all in my imagination. And now, my imagination was shattered. My dream guy, the aloof hottie, was actually so small. Hearing this, Evan's face instantly turned black. He staggered back a couple of steps, looking like he'd taken a massive blow. Then, he snatched a nearby apron and tied it horizontally around his waist. He pushed me toward the door. "Ella, get out. Get out." I was pushed out of his apartment. Still holding the skillet. I turned to look at him, trying to salvage the situation. "It's probably just the shorts. You should wear the gray ones. Gray makes things look bigger, trust me, trust me." In the end, the door almost smashed my face. My master plan went up in smoke before it even got off the ground. Not only did I fail to establish a good relationship with my dream guy, but I also accidentally mocked his size, getting myself thrown out of his apartment. I was depressed. And I couldn't sleep. I mean, this was the man I was determined to sleep with. But he was really so small. I was torn. I tossed and turned until morning. Finally, watching the dawn light filter into my room, I made a decision. No matter the size of my dream guy's package, I had to press on. Maybe smaller is better. It won't hurt as much. That's what they say in the novels. If it's too big, it feels like you're being torn apart. I'm scared of pain. Worst comes to worst, after I've had the experience, I can always go find another handsome guy with a bigger asset. With that, I felt better. I happily went out to grab some breakfast before coming back for a nap. But as soon as I got downstairs, I ran into Evan, who was on his way back up. He was carrying breakfast. He froze when he saw me, and for a split second, he reflexively tightened his legs. My eyes were immediately drawn there. Today, he wasn't wearing the white shorts. He was wearing the flattering gray pants. I was so proud of him. He seemed to understand the look in my eyes. He stammered, "It's gotten colder the last couple of days, and my new clothes haven't arrived yet. I only have 2 pairs of long pants, and the other pair is drying. It just happens to be gray." I nodded vigorously. Yes, I totally get it. Of course, I get it. Can't go around crushing a guy's confidence. Evan seemed a little choked up. "Still not giving up," he said again, "it's just a coincidence." I get it. I gave him a look that said you know and I know and we all know. I whispered, "Don't worry, you're not small. The pants just make it look bigger. Evan, your secret's safe with me." Afraid he'd misunderstand again, I quickly added, "Besides, being small is fine. Look at my boobs, they're pretty small too, huh?" Even if saying that was a bit of an insult to my D-cups. I have a feeling he wants to hit me. It's probably just my imagination. For the next few days, I didn't see Evan at all. He seemed to have taken a major blow to his ego. He wasn't leaving his apartment. I couldn't run into him, couldn't see him. I was so sad that I just slept for days. And then, I got called in as a guardian again. By the time I got to the school, Evan was already talking to the instructor. "Ma'am, I know my grandpa George was out of line this time. I'll definitely have a good talk with him when we get home. Don't worry, I'll apologize to Lucas and his guardian." Hearing this, I quickly walked in. My grandpa Lucas was in the corner of the office, playing with his bird. His face was fine this time, no injuries. When he saw me, Grandpa immediately came over and complained, "Granddaughter, that George Foster is a real piece of work. Not only is he blind, he's vicious. When he couldn't win the fight, he actually bit me like a dog." In the other corner, George Foster scratched the back of his head, looking a little embarrassed. When the instructor saw me, she quickly explained what happened. It wasn't a big deal. During class, Lucas and George happened to be seated next to each other after a classroom shuffle. 2 bad students together definitely weren't going to discuss their studies. They were looking out the window. There was a bird's nest in a tree outside, with 2 baby birds in it. They had just grown feathers and were chirping and hopping around. The 2 of them made a deal. They each claimed one. The one with black spots on its feathers was George's. Then George proposed a bet with Lucas. A bet on who had better eyesight. What do you mean? I didn't quite get it. The instructor closed her eyes, looking completely exasperated. It means they were betting on whose bird was bigger. The office fell silent. My grandpa Lucas suddenly exploded. "That bastard doesn't play fair. My bird was clearly bigger, but he secretly snatched it when I wasn't looking and claimed his bird was bigger. Said all the birds in his family are big." And then, they started fighting, since neither was willing to admit his was smaller. I couldn't help but glance at Evan, who happened to be looking at me at the same time. His expression was extremely complicated. Evan sighed, looking just as helpless as I felt. After finishing up with the instructor, he walked over to me. "My grandpa was in the wrong this time, so I should apologize to you and your grandpa." He paused. "Let me take you guys out to dinner tomorrow." "Okay." I agreed instantly, without even letting him finish his sentence. I was afraid if I waited a second longer, he would only invite my grandpa and not me. "Hey, did I agree to this?" Grandpa's voice came out in a low grumble, his eyes full of resentment as he looked at me. I turned to him and said sweetly, "Be good. As your guardian, it's my responsibility to handle this." Wait, something just occurred to me. I grabbed my grandpa's hand. I remember there's a community event at the apartment complex tomorrow. I don't think you can make it to dinner, Grandpa. Oh well, I guess I'll have to go in your place. Wait, what event? I didn't hear. Mrs. Davis's phone number. Do you want it or not? Before my grandpa could protest any louder, I pulled him into a corner and whispered quickly. Deal. The same Lucas who was so reluctant a second ago was now nodding vigorously. His face was flushed, and he looked incredibly shy. TSK, what a lightweight. Not like me. I'm always cool as a cucumber around my dream guy. Ella, should we decide where to eat? Evan's voice suddenly cut in. Oh, right, okay, let's figure it out now. I immediately ditched my grandpa. I trotted over to Evan and said in my sweetest and most infatuated voice, wherever you want to go is fine with me. Evan's face was probably just too damn handsome. Because while he was talking, I was so busy staring at him that I didn't really hear where he said we were eating. I just nodded along vaguely. The next day, I shamelessly went with him to the restaurant he'd booked. You booked a date night spot? I was a little hesitant. Friends don't usually pick a couple's restaurant for a casual dinner. Unless he's into me, he. You're overthinking it. He glanced at me before going back to the menu. I don't really know anything about these trendy spots or date places. I just found a highly rated local restaurant on Yelp. I had no idea it was a couple's restaurant, the blogger didn't mention it. Oh, I see. That's a shame. I scooted a little closer to him. You found it on Yelp? I love food blogs. Can you send me the post? For some reason, Evan's hand paused as he was flipping through the menu. Then he said coolly, I didn't save it. I can't find it. You can check your browser history. He gave me a tight-lipped smile. I had insomnia last night and scrolled through Yelp all night. Probably 1,000 posts. I'll never find it in my history. Oh, that's too bad, I sighed. I couldn't help but marvel at how he could pull an all-nighter on his phone and not have any dark circles, while I get serious bags under my eyes from sleeping at 2 a.m. Life is so unfair. Despite my grumbling, my appetite was as good as ever. Especially with a handsome guy sitting across from me. He was easy on the eyes. It made the food taste even better. After dinner, Evan went to pay the bill. He came back holding a huge bouquet of tulips, my favorite color, yellow. For me? I asked, pleasantly surprised. Evan had his usual unreadable expression. He said, it's a couple's restaurant. They give them to the couples. Oh, that's nice of them. Such a big bouquet. Usually, even on Valentine's Day, you get a single rose at most. And this wasn't even a holiday. This place was giving out huge bouquets of tulips to couples. What a great restaurant. I'm definitely going to post about it on Yelp when I get home. I took the flowers, and Evan and I walked out side by side. We didn't live far, so we had decided to walk over. Now that we were full, and it was evening, a walk back was perfect. I held the tulips as we walked shoulder to shoulder. Evan was as quiet as ever, so I started the conversation. When I was little, my grandma used to grow tons of tulips. I looked down at the bouquet in my arms, getting lost in memory. Back then, my favorite yellow tulips grew the best. I loved them so much. I'd spend every day in the yard watering them, just waiting for them to bloom so I could see the magnificent sight. I couldn't help but sigh. Seeing this, Evan asked curiously, did the flowers wilt? I shook my head and continued, there was a little boy next door, a chubby kid. He'd climb up on the wall and grin at me, calling me a flower fairy. He was a sweet talker, so I invited him over for the flower pastries my grandma made me. You have to share the good stuff, you know. But then I paused, practically gritting my teeth. That little fatty got so excited running over that he tripped on a rock and fell right into my flower bed. He crushed a whole patch of my tulips. And because he was so fat, He thrashed around for a while, rolled around on the ground a few times, and ended up crushing my entire field of tulips. Just thinking about it made me hate that little fat kid. Especially when he got up, looked at the mess he'd made of my tulips, and asked me with an innocent face, "Little fairy, how did the flowers die?" I was so mad I almost punched him. But he was just too fat. My fist just sank into his soft flesh. It didn't even hurt him. He just laughed and said my massage felt really good. I almost fainted from rage right then and there. Luckily, my grandma immediately made me drink some of that nasty herbal medicine. The smell was so strong it went straight to my brain. I'll probably never forget that taste as long as I live. Maybe he didn't do it on purpose, Evan said quietly. I snorted. Not on purpose. That's what the little fat kid said, too. He even promised he'd plant a bunch of yellow tulips for me himself to make up for it. But then he moved away and disappeared. I think he ran off because he had a guilty conscience. So, when I found out his house was empty, I was so mad I climbed onto his yard wall and screamed at the top of my lungs. I called him a little fatty. A nasty little fatty. This time, Evan's expression changed again and again. He looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't. I waved my hand. It's fine, it's all in the past. It's not like I'm ever going to see that little fat kid again, so who cares? Do you remember the little fat kid's name? Faced with Evan's question, I thought about it seriously, but it was too long ago. I couldn't remember. I don't remember, but it doesn't matter anymore. He was just a neighbor. I shrugged, a careless smile on my face. For some reason, Evan seemed unhappy. I was about to say something else, but he pointed to his front door and said, "We're here. Get some rest." Wait, don't you usually pull all-nighters? I'm planning to sleep early tonight, he said, his face blank. I was getting desperate. Come on, it's still early, not even midnight yet. Let's chat for another 5 minutes. Yep, a familiar scene. His response was, once again, a door that almost slammed in my face. It shut tight. Such a perfect night, we should be doing something more meaningful, but instead, we were just going back to our own rooms to sleep. It was heartbreaking. But there was nothing I could do. My dream guy was resolute, giving me 0 openings. For the next few days, he was even more distant. I felt like I'd been dumped. So I decided to go find my grandpa Lucas, who was also nursing a broken heart. Mrs. Davis, the belle of the apartment complex. Last night, she officially told my grandpa that she already had someone she liked and couldn't accept his feelings. My grandpa freaked out. He chased after her with a tacky bouquet of baby's breath and roses, offering to be the other man. But he still failed. So now he was crying in class. The instructor was worried he'd have a health issue and sent me a text. I decided to use this as an opportunity to go to the school and find Lucas. We could cry on each other's shoulders. I hadn't been to the school much, and I always went straight to the office, so I wasn't sure where his classroom was. By the time I finally found it, class had been out for 5 minutes. He wasn't answering his phone or texts, so I decided to lie in wait. I sat in the empty classroom, waiting for him to come back. But instead of my grandpa, George and his new desk mate showed up. They were talking as they walked. "George, why have you been fighting with Lucas so much lately? Do you really have it in for him? That brat." George's eyes were wide with anger. "It's that rascal grandson of mine. He keeps egging me on to spar with old Lucas. If we keep this up, I'm never going to graduate." What the hell? Evan was pushing his grandpa to bully my grandpa? That's horrible. This is straight up school bullying. I have to punish Evan. Punish him hard. I'm going to rock his world. I'm going to make him lie in bed and cry while singing "I Will Survive" to me. Just then, my phone dinged. It was a message from my cousin, who's studying abroad. He said, "My dearest sister, your little brother has just landed. Bow down and welcome me, ha ha ha." A total drama king. My first instinct was to block and delete him to avoid catching his 8th grade syndrome. But just as I was about to do it, an idea sparked in my mind. The guy might be a lost cause, but he was also gullible enough that people let their guard down around him. For some jobs, he might be exactly what I needed. So I personally went to the airport to pick him up and brought him back to my little apartment. My aunt and uncle don't live in this city. He probably snuck back into the country to mess around. And he probably didn't have a place to stay. That's why he was calling me for help. Perfect. We could make a deal. I give him a place to stay. He does me a favor. By the time we got back from the airport, we had an agreement. But it was still too early to put the plan into action. So the moment we got to my place, Nathan dove into the guest bathroom. He was a drama king with a touch of germophobia. After such a long flight, he felt gross all over. A shower was non-negotiable. I ignored him and sat on the sofa, reading a novel on my phone. Last night, I'd started a spicy fantasy romance. The male lead was enormous. 17 times in one night. Every position, every angle, the author never repeated herself. It was actually pretty good. So I kept reading. I was at the part where the villainous regent gives a wicked smile, ties himself up with a red rope, takes an aphrodisiac, and then presents himself as a 108-day anniversary gift to the heroine. The heroine was just about to unwrap her present when the doorbell rang. Who is it? I put down my phone, slipped on my slippers, and padded to the door. The person at the door was Evan. He was holding up his phone. The moment he saw me, he said, "Your grandpa Lucas and my grandpa George got into another." He didn't finish his sentence. My dramatic cousin had just emerged from the bathroom, and Evan fell silent. From where he was standing, he had a perfect view of Nathan, wrapped in a bathrobe, swaggering over to the spot I just vacated on the sofa and casually picking up my phone. In a high-pitched, theatrical voice, he cried, "Sister, come and have your way with me." Damn it. He was reading my novel. I was about to turn and give him a smackdown when Evan grabbed my wrist. His expression was unreadable. Who is he? Him? I froze for a second. Evan's face was so dark it threw me off. It took me a moment to answer. He's my brother. That's right, my dearest sister. I've washed myself all clean for you. Come and have your way with me. I couldn't take it anymore. Everyone has their little quirks. It's fine to read this stuff secretly under the covers. But to have it announced publicly, especially in front of the guy I want to hook up with? This was social suicide. I spun around and lunged at him. All right, I'll have my way with you. I'm gonna have my way with you until you're dead. Damn it, I'm going to kill Nathan today. But my lunge failed. Because Evan had wrapped his arms around my waist. His expression was grim. I'm still here. You don't have to be in such a hurry. I shook my head, practically growling, but I really can't wait. The hands on my waist tightened. No, I won't allow it. He said urgently. That moron Nathan naturally realized I was about to attack him. Seeing someone defending him, he peeked out from behind the curtain and said with a smirk, "Ah, this young sir, methinks I have seen him ere now." Damn it, he's doing his ancient drama character again. I really want to kill him. But I have to resist. My dream guy is pleading his case, so I'll just have to wait until he's asleep tonight, throw a blanket over his head, and beat the crap out of him then. What can I say? I'm just that kind. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down, and turned to Evan with a sweet smile. Right, what were you saying before? Evan's eyes flickered. He suddenly pointed to my kitchen. I came to get my pot, I'm out of oil and salt. Can I cook some rice here? No oil and salt? So you can't cook rice? I clearly don't cook enough. My knowledge is limited. But you can't doubt your dream guy. I nodded decisively and personally led him to the kitchen. That idiot Nathan followed us. While Evan was washing the rice, Nathan tugged on my sleeve. He whispered, "Sis, is this the aloof hottie you were telling me about?" I gave him a smug nod. "Gonna sleep with him?" He rolled his eyes and sneered, "He's not as hot as my boyfriend." Pfft. You can't compare them. His boyfriend is a mountain of muscle. He could probably kill 8 of me with one punch. Terrifying. Evan is better. Lean and slender, but when his shirt is off, his muscles are solid. Like you've ever touched him to know? Ha. I haven't touched him, but I've crashed into him. Nathan didn't say any more. He went to the guest room and came back with a small bottle of liquor. He whispered to me conspiratorially, "Since he's here, why don't we have a drink?" He winked at me. I hesitated. Nathan and I are cut from the same cloth, neither of us can hold our liquor. I was afraid that instead of taking advantage of him, I'd just make a fool of myself. But Nathan was confident. He poured the liquor into 2 glasses and also poured a glass of water. He handed one of the glasses of liquor to Evan, who was still washing rice. "Hey man, want a drink?" Evan turned to look at him, then glanced at me before handing me his phone. "Ella, can you charge this for me? My battery's dead." "Sure, I'll charge it in my bedroom." I nodded eagerly and headed for my room. My charger was on the nightstand. I went in, closed the door, and plugged in his phone. Since my dream guy was here, I figured I should touch up my lipstick in the bathroom before going back out. When I came out, where was Nathan? Only Evan was in the kitchen. Nathan had vanished. I thought I heard the front door open and close. Did he leave? He said he had something to take care of and just rushed out. That kid has some sense, after all. He knew to give me and Evan some space. I was very pleased. Evan had already started the rice cooker. He came into the living room with 2 glasses, both empty. So, Evan already drank the liquor? I looked at the last glass on the table. It was now or never. I decisively picked it up and downed it in 1 gulp. "Don't." Evan cried out, but he was too late. I'd already finished it. Wow, that's strong. And not good. My head was already spinning a little. But not too much. I'm way better than Nathan. He's a 1-drink wonder. I can handle at least 3. But I had to pretend to be drunk. So I started swaying deliberately. As I'd expected, Evan rushed over to steady me. I took the opportunity to fall into his arms, my right hand copping a feel of his abs. Ha ha, score. I was ecstatic. "Ella, are you okay? That drink. Was that alcohol?" I played dumb, then looked up at him and poked his lips. "Evan, you have really nice lips. I want to kiss them." Pretend to be drunk, act crazy. Take what little advantage I can. I don't feel guilty. He's the one who let his grandpa bully mine. This is just payback. Besides, a drunk person can get away with anything. Even if Evan resists, the worst he'll do is dump me on the sofa and leave. Tomorrow, I'll just have amnesia. I figured he wouldn't hold a grudge against a drunk girl. And I wasn't being that outrageous. Just a couple of touches. And, attempting a couple of kisses. Hearing my words, Evan froze, the tips of his ears turning bright red. Ooh, a shy one. I decided to strike while the iron was hot. Just 1 kiss, okay? Ella, do you even know who I am? Evan's tone suddenly became serious. I nodded and said, just as seriously, I know. You're Evan, the Evan I like. Might as well sneak in a confession, he. He froze again, his grip on my hand loosening. I seized the chance, stood on my tiptoes, and slowly pressed my lips to his. If he wanted to refuse or resist, he had plenty of time. But he didn't. He didn't resist. He even tilted his head down slightly, actively kissing me back. Holy crap. I finally kissed my dream guy's lips. This is awesome. My mind was going wild, but on the outside, I had to keep up the drunk act. I tentatively darted my tongue out, and he suddenly pulled me into a tight embrace. Making out is amazing. I was getting carried away. My hands started to wander uncontrollably. Collarbone. Abs. And further down, I paused. He paused too. Wait, I could have sworn it was small. Evan nibbled my earlobe, his voice a seductive whisper. Sweet Ella, still think it's small? Not small, it's huge. He's very well endowed. I didn't believe it. I reached out and gave it a squeeze. His breathing grew heavier. Ella, don't do that. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold back. Then don't. Perfect. Time to inspect the goods. What if he came prepared and it's fake? I had to verify it myself. Then I'd know for sure. Evan was breathing heavily, his hands gripping my shoulders. He asked one more time. Ella, are you serious? He was taking forever. I yanked down his pants and pushed him onto the sofa. Wait. Now what? I sighed. He said weakly, no condom. Hilarious. As a horny girl who spends her days plotting to pounce on her aloof neighbor, did he really think I'd drop the ball on something like this? I reached under the sofa and pulled out a small box. Just in case, I'd followed the plots of my novels and prepared for every possibility. I had stashed condoms in every conceivable location. And see? It paid off today. I announced triumphantly, I've got plenty. The man beneath me was silent for a moment. Then, the world spun, and suddenly I was on the bottom. He covered my eyes with his hand. And then, this and that and ah. It hurt like hell. But, it also felt really, really good. In the end, I was exhausted, sprawled on the bed, with only one thought in my head, I, Ella Clark, am complete. I barely slept a wink. The next morning, a loud banging on the door shook the apartment. Evan and I, lying in bed, both opened our eyes at the same time. It was a little awkward. So. We're so in sync. Evan cleared his throat and spoke first. We've already, done it. So. I was still a bit out of it. So you have to take responsibility. He said it with determination. I nodded vigorously. Okay, I'll take responsibility for you. He blinked. He looked at me and said, that works too. And just like that, I had a handsome, well-endowed boyfriend. Could life get any better? But the door was still being hammered on. We had to get up and, wrapped in our messy clothes, go to the door. Evan opened it first. Holy crap, I slept in the fire escape all night. I'm freezing. That black-hearted Evan, he figured out my plan and switched the glasses. I'm the one who drank all the. Nathan stopped mid-rant when he saw Evan, and then me, being shielded behind him. Evan put his arm around me and cut him off. Ella is my girlfriend now. So? Nathan was confused. He looked at me. Sister, you have to stand up for me. Have some shame. You're not allowed to call her sister. Evan snapped, pulling me closer and glaring at Nathan. Nathan was about to explode. I will too. I'll call her whatever I want. I've been calling her sister since we were kids. What are you gonna do about it? Wait, Evan was confused. What do you mean, you've been calling her that since you were kids? I was a little confused too. What's the problem? He's my brother. Brother? Evan repeated. I nodded. I'm pretty sure I introduced him yesterday, right? Evan sighed. Blood related? Hilarious. Of course. Not just anyone gets to call me their sister, Finally, I saw Evan, who had been scowling at Nathan, suddenly break into a smile. He even clapped him on the shoulder. Hey, little bro. Last night was a misunderstanding. Now that I had a boyfriend, I wasn't going to hide it from my grandpa. To my surprise, he wasn't angry. He just sighed. I can't believe it. Old George was right after all. After all these years, I've lost our bet completely. All these years? I've only known Evan for a few months. Grandpa rolled his eyes at me. Don't tell me you still don't know who Evan is. I nodded. He's Evan. Grandpa was speechless. Remember that little fat kid who lived next door to us back in the day? How could I forget? Wait, my eyes went wide. I looked at my grandpa and said, my voice trembling, Evan was that little fat kid? Yes, that was me. Evan had appeared in the classroom at some point. He was holding a huge bouquet of yellow tulips. Little fairy, I'm here to keep my promise. Later, a question occurred to me. But I thought if you were fat as a kid, you couldn't be big later on? Evan was silent for a moment. Then he said, I was only 6 then. I started working out after we moved. I wasn't fat during puberty. Oh, so that's how it works. He raised an eyebrow and smiled. Why? Are you that concerned about it? Of course I am. My lifelong happiness depends on it. Evan's story. It was a completely ordinary day. I was bored and, to impress my grandpa, I decided to climb the wall. To prove that I wasn't really fat. After a lot of effort, I fell. It hurt. But it was fine. I kept trying. Finally, I made it to the top of the wall. I was exhausted. I heard laughter from somewhere nearby. I looked down. In a field of flowers, a little girl with 2 buns in her hair was watering the plants. Her smile was beautiful. She had 2 bright red flowers in her hair. Like a flower fairy. I really liked her. I got so lost in thought that I fell off the wall. I scrambled home. Mom, I saw a fairy. My mom gave me a smack. She said I was being too loud. But it didn't matter. I kept climbing the wall. The little fairy noticed me. She even invited me over for flower pastries. I was so excited. But then, I fell again. And I destroyed her favorite flowers. The little fairy cried so hard. I promised her that one day, I would plant flowers for her myself to make it up to her. Only then did she stop crying. But my parents had to move for work. It was urgent. Overnight, I woke up in the city. No. I had to go back. I was almost kidnapped by a stranger. Luckily, I was clever. I managed to run away and saw the little fairy standing in front of my old house, yelling at me. She called me a little fatty, a liar. I was sad. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't fat, that I would lose weight, and that I would never break my promise. But before I could say anything, I fainted from hunger. When I woke up again, I was back in our city home. I cried and cried, wanting to go back. This time, we went back. My parents came with me. But the little fairy was gone. She was only there for the summer vacation. When summer ended, she went home. But I remembered her name. Ella. It sounded so nice. When I grow up, I will find you and keep my promise. I forgot to say, my name is Evan. I finally grew up. I wanted to see her, so I came to this city. I wanted to be her friend. And then her boyfriend. She hasn't changed. Just like her grandma said, she's always been boy crazy. Good thing I started working out when I was 7. I have pecs, I have abs. And I'm handsome. Yes, I got good genes. My grandpa always says so. So, it's time to start seducing her.